Today I'd like to discuss with you the process that we go through in order to level the fixture, get the 5% plus or minus tilt out of the fixture. But before we go into that, I wanted to show you what our housing looks like, where we have installed a pivot rib, if you will, which enables us to tilt the fixture one way or the other. If you look in here in the housing right here, I've removed the fitter clamp. This is the fitter clamp that goes here. If you look inside of the housing, you'll see a rib right down here. That rib is what we use to pivot the fixture up and down. That is a pivot point for us. So when we put the mast arm in there and we tighten the front bolts up or the back bolts up, whichever we want to tighten up first, that's where the fixture is designed to pivot at. So I wanted to show you what we actually use to pivot the fixture with before we actually go into the installation of a fixture, and show you how to go about tightening the bolts and what sequence and how to tighten them to get the tilt out of them that you require 5 degrees up or 5 degrees down. Okay, now that we've reviewed what is actually in the casting that enables us to tilt the fixture plus or minus 5 degrees, I'd like to go ahead and show you how we go about getting that particular degree of tilt out of the fixture. As you can see, I've got a fixture installed on a 2-inch mast arm here. This is our 4-bolt fitter design here. That is designed for high vibration areas, bridges, etc. Any locations that you would have a high amount of vibration. And as you can see, the fixture's just sitting on the arm right now. It's just hanging there. What I'd like to do is show you how we go about getting the max amount of tilt out of the fixture. As you can see, all 4 bolts are loose, clamp will move. It's important when you're trying to tilt the fixture one way or the other that when you start the process, all of your bolts are loose, and when you start to tighten it up, if you're going to tighten the front ones up, make sure the back ones remain loose. And vice versa, if you're going to tighten the back ones up first, make sure the front ones are down loose enough. Because what happens is if you start to tighten these up and these start to tighten up, you're not going to get the tilt out of the fixture. So it's important that they remain loose while you tighten one side or the other if you're trying to tilt the fixture up or down. We're going to assume this fixture needs to go down 5 degrees. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how to tighten the bolts in order to get the 5 degrees of tilt down out of the fixture. And all we're going to do is on these front bolts here, we're going to run these front bolts up together till we get them up there and they start touching the mast arm. You notice we still got some play back here in between the bolt head and the fitter plate. That's important to have that in there. Now all I'm going to do is I'm going to take and I'm going to go in and I'm going to torque these front 2 bolts, kind of alternating back and forth, and I'm going to torque them to 12 foot-pounds of torque. After I reach that, then that's plenty enough. 10 foot-pounds is plenty. You don't have to put 12 on it. I'm just doing it for this video here. I'm going to put 12 on here. And once you get 12 on the front, just torque right there. Then you want to stop. Okay. Now you've got it in the downward position, 5 degrees, and you've got it secure. It's not going to move like that. But then what we want to do, just to make sure, is we want to come to the back bolts. And again, just run them up till they start touching, and then run the other one up so that it's close. Again, you don't want to run one side all the way up and then try and bring the other side up. And again, all you want to do on those back bolts is get them good and snug. You definitely don't have to put 12 foot-pounds of torque on them. You just want to get them good and snug so that they don't come out or they don't vibrate loose. And the fixture don't rotate on the arm. That's the most important thing, is that that fixture does not move on the arm. One of the things that helps us with these fitter bolts is the bosses that these bolts travel into. As they go in further inside of the boss is tapered down. It gets smaller. So the more you run these bolts in, the tighter they actually get inside of the fitter bosses. As you can see now, I'm pulling on this fixture pretty good and it's not moving. Now what I want to do is I want to install the degree gauge on top of it. We got an area up here for that level or degree gauge to go on, and show you the 5 degrees tilt downward that we have on this fixture. Okay, this is the same fixture that we just installed. All I've done is put a degree gauge on top of it, and as you can see up top there, we've got a 5 degrees of tilt in the fixture. It's actually tilted down 5 degrees. So that's how you would go about tightening the fitter bolts up to obtain the 5 degree tilt down on it. And now I'm going to start over from scratch on the other way, and we're going to show you how to lift it 5 degrees. Okay, now we're going to go to the second phase of the installation, and we're going to show you how to go about adding 5 degrees of tilt to the fixture. In other words, the fixture is going to be tilted up in the air 5 degrees. If you needed to tilt the fixture up due to an unlevel pole or an unlevel arm, you can tilt it up 5 degrees. I want to show you what the procedure is for tilting it upwards. Now if you look at this, this is just like we said before. We're going to start off with our fitter clamps loose, the fitter bolts loose. And again, this is the same 2 fitter clamp, 4 washer assembly, bridge fitter assembly, installed on a 2-inch arm, which has an OD of 2 3/8 inches. Now if you remember before, we were going to leave the fixture tilted down, which is the way it's installed right now. It's free on the arm. Again, I just got it hanging here. And now we want to, instead of tilting the fixture down, we want to tilt the fixture up 5 degrees. So what we would do is just the opposite of what we did a while ago. If you remember, to tilt it down, we tighten the front 2 bolts first. Well, in order to lift it up, we're going to have to do just the opposite. So we're going to have to tighten the back 2 bolts first. And then that'll give us our 5 degree tilt. Remember, it's important when you're tightening the back ones or the front ones first that you leave some play in there. Not enough that the bolt will fall out, but enough in there that that fitter clamp can move once you start to tighten on the back end. If you don't have that play in there, you're not going to be able to get the complete 5 degrees of tilt out of that fixture. Okay? So it's very important that when you're installing it and you're trying to tilt it one way or the other, that you have those front fitter bolts or back fitter bolts, depending on which ones it is, completely loose, that they don't engage the fitter clamp when you're actually installing the fixture. Okay? So what we're going to do once again, we're trying to lift it 5 degrees, is we're going to go in and we're going to torque these back bolts. Just the back 2 bolts to begin with. And we're going to torque them at 12 foot-pounds. get to 12, we'll back off of it a little bit. No need to go over 12. And just torque right there at 12. And torque our other one at 12. And that one just torqued at 12. You want to make sure, number one, you try to stay off of these bolts with impact wrenches if you can. We're looking at anywhere from 10 to 12 foot-pounds of torque. Your typical impact driver from Home Depot, just a DeWalt impact driver, is going to run you about 118 to 120 foot-pounds of torque. So you want to try to stay off of these bolts, these fitter assemblies, with impact wrenches. I always like to use a socket wrench, and it's just as easy to put it on a torque wrench and make sure you don't over torque it. The goal is to make sure the fixture does not rotate on the arm or come off of the arm. So what we're going to do now, we're going to run the front bolts up. Again, we're going to run them up till we start touching. And after we start touching the clamp, then we need to alternate and make sure that we bring one side up a little bit and then we bring the other side up a little bit. You're going to want to tighten one side down completely and then you have to come back and tighten the other ones. Now one of the things I do on the opposite fitter bolts versus the side that I'm trying to get the tilt out of, after I've torqued the back two bolts to 12 foot-pounds, it's not necessary to torque the front two to 12 foot-pounds. What I like to do is just get it good and snug. And again, the main goal is to make sure that you don't allow the fixture to move on the arm. And if you can see this, I'm trying to rotate it one way or the other and it won't move. It's completely secure. And now I'm going to show you here in just a second. Now we've got the fixture tilted up 5 degrees. And it all depends on which one of the set of these bolts you tighten up first, because we're pivoting on that high rib that's inside of the housing, and that's the way our fixtures are designed to tilt if they don't have the steps in them to level them up with the steps. And we don't have steps in the 4-bolt assembly. The 4-bolt assembly has to be leveled with the rib that is extended down inside of the housing there. Now, as you can see, this is the fixture mounted with the fixture tilted up 5 degrees. I've set the degree gauge on top of the fixture here, and I'll get up there where you can see a close-up of it and see that it in fact is tilted upwards 5 degrees versus the other way we showed you it was tilted down 5 degrees. I hope this has been helpful and helps you understand how to go about leveling or installing the 4-bolt fitter design and getting that fixture level.